Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne. C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Des pour faire un accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage, il fait souvent mérité. Yo tellement prend cas au sérieux que yo faut connaître si yo pas joindre l'argent pour yo même tout yo pas toucher qui donc yo obligé de travailler puis yo ka faut toucher et tant qu'on toucher plus c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout pas un accident qui trop petit mais relais connu quel que soit accident gagnant maître Kane ou soit maître Vital deux offices pour servir Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, dans Sunrise, téléphone 954 723 51 23, dans North Miami Beach, 16210, Nord-Est, 11e Côte, téléphone 305 545 51 23. Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Des pour faire un accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage, il fait souvent mérité. Yo tellement prend cas au sérieux que yo faut connaître si yo pas joindre l'argent pour yo même tout yo pas toucher qui donc yo obligé de travailler puis yo ka faut toucher et tant qu'on toucher plus c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout pas un accident qui trop petit mais relais connu quel que soit accident gagnant maître Kane ou soit maître Vital deux offices pour servir Braod 6190 Nord-Ouest 11e Street dans Sunrise téléphone 954 723 51 23 dans North Miami Beach 16210 Nord-Est 11e Côte téléphone 305 545 51 23.
Good morning and welcome to What You Need to Know About the Law. As you know, we come to you every Saturday morning from the law offices of Kane and Vitel, and we can be reached anytime, as you know, at 954 523 5123. I know that I talk about this decent amount of time on this radio program, and that's because it's something that we handle here in the office and something that I think is important that the community is educated about, and that's workers' compensation and eligibility for workers' compensation in Florida, and some of the things that you need to know about. And I bring it up because it is so different than most types of cases, and most people are going to be eligible for it if you're ever injured or have an illness as a result of your job. And I bring it up because now with COVID over the last few years, people are getting back to the job site. There's a lot of construction workers out there. A lot of my clients are back working in hotels and restaurants and other places. And it's important to understand that Florida has a system in place to provide benefits if you are injured or have an illness as a result of the job. And one of the things I would say is important in both workers' comp or any type of case, and that's being honest, because one of the things that gets people in trouble with a workers' compensation claim is if they are not being honest about the case or honest about their past situation. So always be honest when you're making a claim for workers' comp. It's pretty simple how Florida workers' comp works. If you're an employee and you're injured on the job or you become ill due to the job, if you get an illness, that's a long-term situation. Any kind of construction-related companies, all of these businesses must have workers' compensation if they have more than 4 people on staff. If in construction, if they have 1 employee, they must have workers' compensation. So whether you're working in construction or in a hospital or a retail or in a restaurant or healthcare, any of those industries, it's most likely that you are covered under workers' compensation, unless, of course, you are in a small company or work for yourself. Most people, as I said, are going to be covered under workers' comp. There are a few exceptions. If you are an independent contractor, you are not covered by workers' compensation. But independent contractors, most of you know who you are, and in essence, you work for yourself and not work for a company, so you're not eligible for workers' compensation benefits. Most of the time, work-related injuries, they're typically straightforward. You have a fall or some type of machinery breaks, or you fall off a ladder. Those are pretty typical accidents. You slip and fall in the kitchen. These are all types of workers' compensation cases, and they're pretty straightforward. It's important to remember that workers' compensation does cover your injuries or illness as a result of the accident. Obviously, the accident type of cases are much more straightforward and easier, but illnesses related to your job may also be eligible. They're going to be a little bit more difficult to prove and a little bit more difficult to maneuver, but we certainly can cover people that have an illness as long as it is related to some part of the job, related to your job, then you're eligible for workers' compensation. A good example of one of these type of illnesses that comes from the job would be someone, and we have a client now that we're working with that works at a chemical plant, and they were inhaling the chemicals. They were exposed to the chemicals, and because of that, those irritants have caused her to have some respiratory problems and also some other illnesses that were a part of the job. It wasn't an accident. This was something that was happening over time because she was inhaling and ingesting these chemicals. I remind you, of course, if you get in an accident or you have a loved one that's involved in an accident, the best thing to do, the easiest thing to do to get your questions answered is to call us. We're available anytime, 954-523-5123 or 305-545-5123. I do ask, if we're not available, please leave me your name and your telephone number, and we will call you back. So, what happens if you get injured on the job? What benefits are you entitled to? And this is where it's very different than a slip and fall or a car accident, where you're entitled to pain and suffering and other what we call non economic damages. With workers' compensation, it's basically a wage replacement system that will replace your wages at 66% if you cannot go back to work. And it also pays all of your medical bills related to your injuries. Basically, with workers' compensation, the medical is going to include pretty much anything involving hospitalization, doctor visits, any kind of test, physical therapy, and any kind of prescriptions. Um, the coverage for the medical and rehab expenses, these are pretty important benefits when you get hurt on the job, because everyone knows that healthcare costs are expensive. When you are hurt on the job as a worker, you're not going to have to pay any medical bills. There's no deductibles. As long as you have a legitimate injury and were hurt on the job, you should at least be secure to know that you have benefits that are going to cover your medical bills for the rest of your life, no matter what injuries you've sustained. In addition to the medical care that you will receive for the rest of your life, if you are out of work short term or even long term, workers' compensation will cover not only your medical bills, but will pay you a portion of your lost wages. You're entitled to 66% of your lost wages that is paid to you usually on a 2-week basis. And that is based on whether their doctor says you can or cannot return to work. Probably the most important thing about workers' compensation to know, if you're listening to me today, and that is, if you get in an accident, time is of the essence. It is important that you understand that an employee who is injured or has an illness at their job, you must report it to your employer immediately. You have 30 days to report your injury to your employer, to your supervisor, to someone at the employer, um, within 30 days. If you do not report the claim within the 30 days, you are in jeopardy of having the whole case denied for late reporting. So, again, this is not a little bit important. This is very important. If you get injured on the job, even if you're not sure how serious your injuries are going to be, I highly recommend that you at least report it to your job, so that if it is something serious down the road, you've reported it and the claim is open. Once you report the claim to your employer, they have 7 days to report it to their insurance company. And then typically you're going to hear something from the workers' compensation insurance company, probably within 2 to 3 weeks from the injury. Um, you do not have to have a lawyer with workers' compensation claims. So if you're injured, there's no requirement to have a lawyer. I would tell you that if you have a serious injury or something that's going to keep you out of work for more than a few days, and is going to be a little bit more persistent, I think having a workers' compensation attorney on your side is important because it's going to help you navigate the process and make sure that you're receiving all the benefits that you're entitled to. And believe me, I understand that many of you are unsure about how to apply for workers' compensation. I think some of you are afraid of being fired or having some other retaliation against you. And I will tell you that the employer is not supposed to fire you or threaten to discharge you for making a workers' compensation claim. The law is very clear in that regard. And again, if you're injured, you're entitled to these benefits. And as I said before, sometimes getting workers' compensation benefits can be pretty straightforward and not a very difficult process, but oftentimes it is a challenging process and it can be difficult to get the claim through and approved. And all this time you're sitting there suffering and needing medical care. But there are times that you're going to have some difficulty, especially when the employer or the company, the insurance company, try to contest or deny the claim. Some of the reasons that they deny the claim would be that they are disputing the cause of the injury, or they're claiming that the illness or injury didn't happen from the job. Sometimes the employer or their insurance company may refute the claim and say that the injury or illness were not caused by something job related. They may claim that it happened at home or at another location, or that you were suffering from this illness before you had the accident. These are all defenses that are used and ways that they can try to deny your claim. I can say I don't see a lot of total denials over the years. They usually will pick up the claim, but where we do see a lot of fighting and where having a workers' compensation attorney on your side can really help you is when there's disagreements, for example, regarding the disability or the injury or the necessity for wage loss. Things like that we do fight about a lot. They will try to do what they can to limit having to pay those lost wages and medical bills, and we sometimes have to fight because of those disagreements. Again, you don't always need to hire a workers' compensation lawyer, but I will tell you, it's important to have the knowledge and experience to know what's going on. And that's why I do encourage you, no matter what type of case you have, it's worth a phone call. It's free. As I've told you, 954-523-5123 is how you get in touch with us. And that way we can go over your specific case and we can decide together whether it makes sense to have an attorney or whether you can do it on your own. Again, I think if you have a serious injury and you're going to be out of work for a while, there's no question having us on your side is helpful. First of all, because we have the knowledge and experience to help you really understand the process and really navigate the process to make sure you're getting the benefits that you need here in Florida. The other thing that we're going to help you do is gather the evidence we're going to need. We're going to be able to get the medical records together, and most importantly, be able to negotiate with the insurance company and the employer in a way that you probably couldn't do on your own, because again, you don't have that experience and knowledge that we've been gaining for over 30 years. I will tell you very clearly, if your claim is denied or they dispute the claim saying that you didn't get injured on the job or any of those reasons, you absolutely should call us and we can help. If you're having issues, if you've been threatened by your job or wrongfully terminated because of the workers' compensation, that's definitely a time to call our office and we can help.
Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est que là, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Des tout fait un accident machine ou sinon accident de travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux que faut qu'on est si on pas joindre l'argent pour il même tout il pas toucher qui donc il obligé de travailler pour qu'à faut toucher et tant qu'on toucher plus c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas d'accident qui est trop petit, mais relais connu, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. 60 11e Street, dans Sunrise, téléphone 954 723 51 23, dans North Miami Beach, 162 10, Nordiste 11e côte, téléphone 305 545 51 23. Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est que là, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Et pour faire un accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage, il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux que il faut qu'on ait, si il pas joindre l'argent pour il même tout, il pas toucher. Qui donc, il est obligé de travailler, puis il faut toucher, et tant qu'on touche plus, c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas d'accident qui est trop petit, mais relais connu, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, dans Sunrise, téléphone 954 723 51 23, dans North Miami Beach, 162 10, Nord-Est, 11e Côte, téléphone 305 545 51 23.
Okay, we are back to what you need to know about the law. And reminding you, if you have any questions about the law, if you get involved in a car accident, a work accident, you have a loved one that has a medical malpractice problem, anytime someone needs help, we're here for you. 954 523 5123 or 305 545 5123. I do ask if we're unavailable, please leave me your name and your telephone number, and I will certainly call you back. I don't like to sound like I'm bragging about how wonderful our office is, but I'm going to take a minute to do that. And that is because one of the advantages of coming to Kane and Vitel is we don't only handle workers' compensation cases. As many of you know, we handle also regular car accidents and negligence cases. We just talked about how workplace injuries can be life altering and they can affect you not only physically, but also financially and emotionally when you're not able to work and you're getting paid less than you're normally getting paid. One of the things that I think our office brings to workers' compensation clients is the ability to also understand that our clients have rights under third-party negligence claims if they contributed it to the injury. Now, I'm not saying it's common. Most of the time, when you're injured on the job, we cannot do a third party negligent lawsuit because you can't sue your own employer or any of the employees who might have caused the accident. But what Florida does allow, you can make a claim against a third party for a workers' compensation injury, even if you're already receiving workers' compensation benefits. And we do this, we're always looking for a third party liability, but we do this where we will allow our client to receive workers' compensation benefits from the employer, get paid, get their medical care. And in the meantime, we are pursuing a third party claim against a separate legally responsible party that may have caused the injury. Now, remember, in order to make one of these third-party claims, it is critical that you understand the negligent must have been caused by another party, not your employer or any of your coworkers. And this is typically can include situations where there's a product that's manufactured wrong, maybe one of the machines you're using malfunctions, or maybe there's a contractor doing work on the property and you get injured that way. As long as another party caused or contributed to your injury, you may be able to make a third party claim on top of the workers' comp. Why do we fight so hard to find these cases? Because we know under workers' compensation, they're going to cover your medical expenses and a portion of your lost wages, 66%. But if you've suffered non-economic damages like pain and suffering, emotional distress, mental anguish, these are not covered under workers' compensation. They don't pay a penny for these damages. But if we have that third party claim, we can then seek compensation for these losses that won't be covered under workers' comp. So if we find that third party claim, we're going to be able to seek money for your pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of life from that third party negligent person or company. Some examples and scenarios where you might have a third party claim. The most common, and we just finished a case for a wonderful client last week, is if you're delivering or transporting things for your company and you're involved in a car accident. If you're injured while making a delivery or transporting goods as part of your job and the accident was caused by another driver, you might be eligible to, number one, pursue the workers' compensation case with your company, because remember, you were injured while working, but also be able to make a car accident case, a third-party negligence case against the other driver and pursue injuries against the other driver that crashed into you. Another one is if there is an independent contractor or subcontractors from another company that are maybe working at your place of business and they injure you, or sometimes under construction sites, there's some complications there. But sometimes if another company, they drop something on your head, you may have a workers' compensation claim and a claim against the independent contractor or subcontractor from another company that might have caused your injuries. Another common third-party claim we see is dealing with machinery that might malfunction, or there may be a problem with something that was chemicals that were not mislabeled. If someone else was the cause, we can make a claim. Another one that's very common is if you were injured on someone else's property while performing a work-related task. If you're working at a third-party location, let's say you're working for an air conditioning company and you have a fall at a property owner's property and it was negligent, there was a hazard that caused you to fall, you may also have the workers' comp, and you still may be able to sue the property owner for the slip and fall for the negligence injury. Now, I'm not telling you that these are super common, but I am telling you it is important to hire a law firm that has experience to know what to look for. These claims can be complicated. There's some issues sometimes with coordinating the timing and the benefits. We typically let the workers' compensation claim play out, let our clients get all the treatment they need and get back on their feet. And then after we conclude with the workers' compensation claim, we then pursue the car accident claim or any other third-party claim. Another thing that comes up in these cases is workers' compensation is going to have a lien on any money you receive from a third-party settlement or judgment. So if you do take that car accident case and you sue the at-fault driver, the workers' compensation insurance company does have a right to get reimbursement for monies they spent. So again, it's just important to have a law firm or lawyers that understand this process and understand the ins and outs on how this works. And again, just because they're difficult doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it. But like any other third-party claim with negligence, with workers' compensation, it does not matter how you're injured. If you get injured or have an illness on the job, no matter whose fault it was, it could be your fault, could be a coworker's fault. No matter whose fault it is, you're covered under workers' compensation. We're still going to, in this third-party claim, we still have to prove that the third party was negligent. So we're going to have to collect the evidence, get witness testimony, and be able to prove that the other side was at fault. You don't have to hire my office to represent you, but I would ask you, and I would encourage you that if you do have a workers' compensation injury, if you hire a law firm, I would make sure that they are involved in both types of claims, that they're involved in workers' compensation claims, but that they also have experience dealing with third-party claims so that they can maneuver through both systems, both the workers' compensation system and then the personal injury system, and do it right. I'm sad and to admit it, but that I have been doing this with you together for over 30 years, which I tell you that because it goes to show you that we have a deep understanding of the workers' compensation laws, but we also have a deep understanding of personal injury laws. And with that experience, it really helps us to maximize your compensation in both situations. And I just think there are other good law firms out there, but I know there's a lot of workers' compensation law firms that only do workers' compensation. And there's a lot of personal injury law firms that only do car accidents and personal injury, and they don't do both together or have such a good understanding of both. So that would be something I would want to make sure I knew.
Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Des pour faire un accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage, il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux que il faut qu'on ait, si on pas joindre l'argent pour, il même tout, il pas toucher. Qui donc, il est obligé de travailler, puis il faut toucher, et tant qu'on touche plus, c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas d'accident qui est trop petit, mais les connus, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, Lanson Rise, téléphone 954 723 71 23, dans North Miami Beach, 16210, Nord-Est, 11e côte, téléphone 305 545 51 23. Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, l'a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, Charles Support, avec tout cas légal. Des pour faire un accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage, il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux qu'il faut qu'on ait, si on pas joindre l'argent pour, il même tout, il pas toucher. Qui donc, il est obligé de travailler, puis il faut toucher, et tant qu'on touche plus, c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas d'accident qui est trop petit, mais les connus, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, Lanson Rise, téléphone 954 723 71 23, dans North Miami Beach, 16210, Nord-Est, 11e côte, téléphone 305 545 51 23.
Okay, we are back to what you need to know about the law, and we are talking about the importance of having a good workers' compensation attorney. And more importantly, if you get involved in an accident or if you get involved in a work accident, just give us a call. We'll point you in the right direction. We'll do what we can to make sure you're protected. And you can do that at 954-523-5123 or 305-545-5123.
nan ede rezout ka aksidan de sou les gens, bagay yo le 954 523 51 23 pendant 305 545 51 23.
A few more things before we close it up today about workers' compensation. First of all, we had this recently, so I'll let you know that what happens if your company goes out of business. If you were injured on the job and you make the claim appropriately, you will be covered even if the company does go out of business.
Si nous-mêmes nous avons déclaré l'accident, nous avons rempli le claim, que la compagnie existe, ne pas exister encore, nous toujours capables de continuer de mener à ça.
Of course, you would have had to have been an employee on the payroll at the time when you were injured, and you would have had to report it within the 30 days and filed it within the time periods. But if you meet all those criteria, even if the company were to go out of business, the workers' compensation insurance company would still be able to provide you compensation for the claim.
Employé de compagnie ça. Et même les compagnies que nous avons travaillé pour lui à fait faillite, il va là encore. Assurance compagnie qui pour lui a honoré claim ça.
What happens, and we had this a couple years ago, what happens if the company stays in business, but the insurance carrier, the workers' compensation insurance carrier goes out of business? What happens then? Well, the good news is there is an insurance guarantee fund here in Florida that covers all insurance companies, and they would pick up the claim on behalf of the insurance company if they were to go out of business. Now, what happens if you're laid off because of the workers' compensation claim? This is the most difficult part to understand in workers' comp. The law is very clear that you are protected from retaliation. You cannot be fired or threatened with being fired due to an injury or accident you sustained. However, the law does say that if you're laid off for any other reason other than retaliation, the company can do that. So if the company is having company cuts, or you can't do the job you used to do before, or they had to hire a replacement, that's all legal under the system. It's a complicated portion of the law, but something you should be aware of, that they can't just fire you simply because you made a claim. So just to wrap it up with regards to workers' comp, what you really need to know, if you're injured on the job or you have an illness on the job, number one important is you must report the accident to your employer as soon as possible. This is limited to 30 days. If you wait too long, you may have no claim at all. Once you file that claim, then you will, if it's approved, you'll start to receive benefits. You'll start to receive medical care. And if the doctor says you can't work, then you'll start to receive wage loss benefits. You should definitely always follow the doctor's recommendations, be it at home or at the office. If they send you back light duty, you need to try to return to work under those restrictions. But That is the most important, is reporting it and doing it quickly.
Alors, il est très important pour suivre sa docteur a dit en termes de plan de traitement que le gagne pour vous-même et leur parler avec lui pour dire exactement ça qui passe là, qui j'en ai sans exagération, de manière que pour vous-même, vous capable sur le chemin de rétablissement aussitôt que possible.
I can tell you the laws here in Florida are very difficult. Workers' compensation is some of the most difficult areas of the law, in my opinion. So I can't promise you that we can get your job back or make miracles, but I can assure you that we will fight to help you receive whatever workers' compensation benefits you're entitled to.
Accident de travail, c'est une loi qui est compliquée ici en Floride. Vous pas capable de garantir que vous avez le travail. Si tout des fois, vous avez besoin de remplacer parce que pour tout le monde, vous faites travail et que vous n'êtes pas capable de faire le travail là encore. Et ça nous va où comme garantie, c'est que notre travail comme ça doit très durement pour vous-même et nous garder tout ça la loi prévoit pour vous et nous pour nous joindre.
One last thing before we wrap it up. We had a client come a couple weeks ago. She was injured on the job, did not hire a lawyer, got her treatment, and she was being offered a settlement from workers' compensation from the insurance company.
Alors, récemment, nous avons un monde qui est accidenté dans le travail. Quand on employé un avocat, il recevoir soins médicaux et à la suite, il était aucune uniforme.
Now, as I said, they don't have to pay you for pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of life, but sometimes it's common that the insurance company would like to offer you a lump sum and close out the claim rather than have to pay you weekly benefits or your medical care for the rest of your life.
Alors, une fois ça arrivé, assurance compagnie, au lieu de demander aux sécurités vitamines pénales, jusqu'à ce que de temps en temps, les finir avec le docteur, suivre son médicaux, de temps en temps, au pas vous préférez offrir une forme pour seul coup, et puis pour faire le dossier à net, de manière que vous-même, leurs besoins, capable d'utiliser comme ça pour la fonction de l'autre.
But if you hear one thing this morning from me, that is, do not try to settle your case on your own without at least contacting an attorney, or please contact our office and let us try to help you out, because you have to remember that the insurance company is never on your side. The insurance company is on their side. And you can bet that any settlement offered to you in any way is going to be better for them than it is for you.
C'est très important pour nous de dire que avant que nous prenions une entente avec une assurance compagnie, contactez un avocat. Pas penser que l'assurance compagnie a travail pour bien-être. Non, je suis intérêt par le premier et tout ça l'a fait de toujours plus bénéfique à lui-même que lié à vous-même. Pour quitter consultation gratuite, avocat de notre contactez les services.
And understand that when they come up with a lump sum settlement amount, it doesn't come from thin air. It comes from a calculation that the insurance company uses to see what they think you would receive with workers' compensation benefits throughout the future of the claim, and they just give it to you all in one lump sum. Understand that any money you are getting from the insurance company is voluntary on both sides. You don't have to accept the settlement, and they don't have to make it. We cannot go to court and force them to give you money. Many clients believe we can go to court and get more than they're offering. All we can do is negotiate very hard and strong and fight until we can get as much as we can for our clients. Two of the biggest things that we're going to look at to determine the value of the case is, number one, how likely are you to have future medical expenses because of your injury, and how much they're going to cost in the future. So, for example, if you have a back injury, that may cost money down the road for them to take care of, and that would be considered as part of the settlement monies.
acheter sur médicaux dans le futur. Et là, nous jouons sur médicaux, ça a combien de fois de service ça a coûté pour nous recevoir une adresse ça. Pour ça, nous avons pas une idée qui genre évaluation de ce ça va faire pour sur médicaux dans le futur.
And then the other thing to consider is what type of disability you have. Are you permanently disabled, meaning you can't return to work, or are you able to go back to work? Because depending on that situation, that will add money to the claim based on two things: future medical and future wage loss. That's the value of your case. It looks like we have come and we are wrapping up to another end of what you need to know about the law. But the good news is we're here for you anytime. All you have to do is call. We're available 954-523-5123 or 305-545-5123. If we're not available, we're not able to get to the phone, please leave me your name and your telephone number, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. And I remind you again, it is a free consultation, so there's no obligation. You're not forced to do anything. The only thing you're going to do is learn and be knowledgeable so you and your family can make good decisions about the law. That's why we come on here every week, and that's why we're going to continue to do this for you, because education, information is king. God bless and bonne fin de semaine. Have a great day.
Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, il a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, child support, avec tout cas légal. Des tout faire accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités le travail qui compensation que dommage il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux que il faut qu'on ait si on pas joindre l'argent pour il même tout il pas toucher. Qui donc il obligé de travailler pour qu'à faut toucher et tant qu'on touche plus, c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas un accident qui est trop petit, mais relais connu, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, dans Sunrise, téléphone 954-723-5123, dans North Miami Beach, 16210, Nord-Est, 11e Côte, téléphone 305-545-5123. Expérience à connaissance ou avocat qui comprennent culture haïtienne, non? C'est clair, on choisit un monde qui peut représenter dans le domaine légal. Cabinet avocat Jonathan Kane avec Franz Vital, des réputations solides, il a occupé des affaires immigration, divorce, child support, avec tout cas légal. Des tout faire accident machine ou sinon accident travail, maître Jonathan Kane avec maître Franz Vital, des capacités pour aider. Il travaille dur pour faire joindre compensation que dommage il fait souvent mérité. Il tellement prend cas au sérieux que il faut qu'on ait si on pas joindre l'argent pour il même tout il pas toucher. Qui donc il obligé de travailler pour qu'à faut toucher et tant qu'on touche plus, c'est qu'on sait à toucher tout. Pas un accident qui est trop petit, mais relais connu, quel que soit accident gagnant, maître Kane ou soit maître Vital, deux offices pour servir. Braod, 6190, Nord-Ouest, 11e Street, dans Sunrise, téléphone 954-723-5123, dans North Miami Beach, 16210, Nord-Est, 11e Côte, téléphone 305-545-5123.